The first part for this project is to perform CRUD operations. And that is, we are going to build the complete CRUD operation part of this project with the back end and then the front end. So let's get into it. And this is where we left in the previous video by modeling the data. So let's begin with the creation of the post. So we are going to develop the API first, and then we get back to front end and then connect to that. So before we create a post, unless we look at the properties that we are going to provide before creating a post. First of all, we will need the description of the post. And let me add one more property called title. To title, and the type is string required and trim is set to true. And for the meantime, we are going to ignore the image, likewise the author. After we are done with the authentication, then we will come back and work on the author. As it stands right now, any user can create a post and there will be no data association. So let me remove the required from here or comment out. And these properties, next earning, this month earning, will be added automatically. So we are going to focus on these two, title and then the description. So let's get back to the server file and create that. Remember, we are going to use MVC design pattern. But let's move step by step and create all the logics on one file. Before we get into that, unless we set up our middlewares. Middleware simply means that it is a function that have access to the request and then the response object, meaning that we can intercede or manipulate the request coming into our server or manipulate the response that's going to send back to the user. So here we are going to have a couple of middlewares. So I will say middlewares here. And the first middleware is called JSON parser. So here, this is how we plug in middleware as app.use and then bring in express. On that, we have a method called JSON. And this middleware is used to pass JSON data. Alright, so let's go ahead and set up the route. We're gonna have one route for creating of post, and then one route to list post, and then one route to update post, and then one route for deleting. This one's supposed to be get post, a single post, and then you're gonna have the deleting. Alright, so let's begin with the first one called creating of the post. And here we're gonna use app.post and then provide the endpoint. I'm gonna specify API version 1 and then /post, and here I'm gonna add create at the end. And then the callback function. And for this, I'm going to use async await here by using arrow function. And inside here, we have access to the request and then the response. The request contains the object or the properties that the user is sending into our server. And the response is what the server is sending back to the user. For example, if we are creating a post, a user will send the title and the description. That's a request making. And then after the post has been created, the server is going to send that data to the user. That's a response. So let's bring in try and catch here. And then inside here, we're going to perform some validations. Or here, we will say that get the payload. The payload simply means the data the user is sending back from the browser or from the Postman. So here we can get it from the what is called rec.body. And I will say post data here is equal to rec post.body. Alright, so let's go ahead and bring in the post model. And I have the auto import, which is this. So here on that, we have a method called create from MongoDB or Mongoose. And you're going to pass in the post data as that. And let's await that. And let's assign to a variable called post created is equal to that. And lastly, res.json by specifying status, and I will say success, and then message, I will say post created successfully, and then the actual data as post created. But in case something goes wrong, we are going to return res.json, and then let's send the error. So we are done with the creation of the post, but we have to improve this. But for the meantime, let's maintain it as it is. So we are done with the first feature called creation of the post. So let's get back to the front end and then try this one out. But before that, let's try to test inside Postman to make sure that it is working before we get back to the client side. So here I'm going to create a workspace, and I'm going to click on the blank and then click on next. And I will say main blog. And let me select personal and create. Alright, so let me create what is called collection. And click on this icon, and let me name my collection as main blog. And then inside, I'm gonna have individual folders for each route or controller or model. So the first one is going to be post model or my controller, and let's create the handler. This one is for creating of post. And then let's provide the endpoint as http://localhost, and the port is 5000. The endpoint is API version 1, and then post/create. Remember, this is what we specify as that, and the method is post method. So here change this one to post. So if I hit send, now let's see, we got these warnings or errors that validation error, description is required, and title is also required, meaning that our schema is working. So let's provide these properties. So click on body here and select raw and then JSON, and let's provide the properties. Title here, I will say awesome course, and then the description, and I will say some description, and let's create. Well, have you seen that our server is hanging, meaning that it is trying to connect to MongoDB before creating. That is why we see this as an empty. But in case we have implemented rare error handling, we are going to see that error. So let me console log the error here, and let me try to create again, and let me check the terminal. Have you seen that we got Mongoose error, and that is buffering timeout after this milliseconds, meaning that it was trying to connect to MongoDB before inserting this document, but we don't have a function to connect to MongoDB. In the next video, let's fix this.